Lesson 23, Section 3, Southern Reconstruction. Under the terms of the Military Reconstruction Act, the U.S. Army returned to the South in 1867. The first thing it did was begin to register voters. Because Congress had banned former Confederates from voting, the right to vote in the South was limited to three groups: freedmen, white Southerners who had opposed the war, and Northerners who had moved south after the war. The South's new voters. African Americans made up the South's largest group of new voters. Most black voters joined the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln and emancipation. White Southerners who had not supported secession were the next largest group. Many were poor farmers who had never voted before. In their eyes, the Democratic Party was the party of wealthy planters and secession, so poor farmers also supported the Republican Party. Southern Democrats were appalled and believed any white man who voted Republican to be a traitor to the South. Democrats scorned such people as scalawags or worthless scoundrels. The last group of new voters were Northerners who had moved to the South after the war. Southerners called these newcomers carpetbaggers, after a type of handbag used by many travelers. They saw carpetbaggers as fortune hunters who had come south to fatten themselves on Southerners' misfortunes. The election of 1868. New voters in the South cast their first ballots in the 1868 presidential election. The Republican candidate was Ulysses S. Grant, a former Union general who supported Reconstruction and promised to protect the rights of African Americans in the South. His Democratic opponent, Horatio Seymour, promised to end Reconstruction and return the South to its traditional leaders, white Democrats. Seymour won a majority of white votes. Grant, however, was elected with the help of 500,000 black votes. The election's lesson to Republicans was that if they wanted to keep control of the White House and Congress, they needed the support of African American voters. The 15th Amendment. In 1869, at President Grant's urging, Congress passed the 15th Amendment, which said that a citizen's right to vote shall not be denied on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. It guaranteed every male citizen the right to vote, regardless of race. With the passage of this amendment, most abolitionists felt their work was done. The American Anti-Slavery Society declared the 15th Amendment to be the capstone and completion of our movement, the fulfillment of our pledge to the Negro race, since it secures to them equal political rights with the white race. New state constitutions. When the Army finished registering voters, Southern Reconstruction got underway. Across the South, delegates were elected to constitutional conventions, and about a fourth of those elected were African Americans. The conventions met and wrote new constitutions for their states. These constitutions were the most progressive or advanced in the nation. They guaranteed the right to vote to every adult male, regardless of race, ended imprisonment for debt, and established the first public schools in the South. The Georgia Constitution stated that these schools should be forever free to all the children of the state. However, under the new state constitutions, these schools were open only to whites. New state governments. Elections were then held to fill state offices. To the dismay of Southern Democrats, a majority of those elected were Republicans, and about a fifth were African Americans. The South's new state governments quickly ratified the 14th and 15th Amendments. By 1870, every Southern state had finished this final step of Reconstruction and rejoined the Union. Next, Southern governments turned to the task of rebuilding. In addition to constructing new schools and hospitals, work was also begun on damaged roads, bridges, and railroads. To pay for these projects, state legislators raised taxes, which caused taxes in the South to increase by up to 400% between 1860 and 1870. African Americans in office. About a fifth of the South's new office holders were African Americans. Blacks served in every Southern legislature and held high offices in 3 states. 22 African Americans represented their states in Congress, 20 in the House, and 2 in the Senate. After watching these representatives, many of whom had been born slaves, Pennsylvania Congressman James G. Blaine said, "The colored men who took their seats in both the Senate and House did not appear ignorant or helpless. They were as a rule studious, earnest, ambitious men, whose public conduct would be honorable to any race."